What's up and welcome to Idle Insights, a show where each week I, Treavor Bettis, talk to interesting people about idle champions and Dungeons and Dragons. And with me this week is the amazing Johnny Stanton.
Hello, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm great. Hello, chat.
Oh yes, hello. Yes, we are live right now. We should say at the top of the show because sometimes we're not, and it confuses people, and I'm sorry about that. But Johnny, if there are people in the chat who don't know who are you for those fine folks who may not know?
I am a football player by trade and a big D&D nerd by hobby, I guess. Slowly kind of taking over my part of my career, which I think is really fun. Um, I am a DM. I'm a player. I was recently in Dimension 20 Adventuring Academy on Dropout with Brennan. I recently DM'd this whole new world that I created along with this incredible cast on Of Dawn and Dusk. I had Luis Carrazzo, Christian Navarro, Persephone Valentine, and Jasmine Bular playing in this virtual game that went 4 parts. It's on my YouTube now. It was on my Twitch. And I had a great time doing that. And hopefully we'll be able to grow out that world in the future. But yeah, that's kind of as far as the football stuff goes, right now I'm a free agent, hoping to be able to be brought back onto a team soon. But that's my whole deal.
I saw the trailer for the show you were just talking about. Was it Dawn and Dusk?
Dawn and Dusk, which
Dawn
was
and Dusk.
I like the name. It's too hard to remember.
And
the fact that it's so close to the Quentin Tarantino movie From Dusk Till Dawn. I should have thought it through a little more.
I think it's a cool sounding name. I like it. But John, I want to start things off with the way that I normally do with folks who are on the show with me for the first time, which is the icebreaker question of how'd you get into D&D?
I got into D&D in college. I was going through college football, going through injuries and stuff. And the one thing I think that is a great coping mechanism for me personally was going to the comic book shop and getting comic books.
Yeah.
So that was already a hobby of mine before this, but I was going to the comic book shop so often. And I started watching some YouTube series, and one of the YouTube channels that I followed already, Corridor Digital, has this sister channel named Node. Node is all about them playing video games, but from time to time, they were playing Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. Oh, and that's how I got into, at first, kind of understanding what D&D was, and that it was, not a board game like a lot of people think it is. It's not like a video game. It's just this weird combination of, hanging out with your friends and rolling dice. And I was so intrigued. I went over to the comic book shop later that week to get my weekly Wednesday pull and asked, like, hey, is there any D&D groups that meet over here? This is the kind of my nerd sanctuary. Can I add to that nerddom that I'm a part of? And he said, yeah, actually, there's a group that just started the new campaign on Sundays. I'll get you in contact with the DM. Ever since then, there have been very short periods of my life in which I am not part of a D&D game, or not at least sometimes in a, maybe once a month one shot. So it's been such a great thing for me to get fully involved with. And I think my kind of going public with it now that I'm in the NFL and when I signed with the Browns in 2020, I just decided, like, hey, why not just make this part of my public brand? And
yeah,
it ended up going really great for me, especially in 2021. I scored my first touchdown on Thursday Night Football, the same night as Critical Role's Campaign 3 premiere.
Are you serious?
So I wore like a Critical Role jacket and a Critical Role shirt. I tweeted before, I posted it before the game, and that was like, the whole stadium walk-in thing. And
that's so cool.
I posted it to Instagram and Twitter before the game saying, is it Thursday yet? Kind of like this. It's very, if you know, if you don't know, it just looks like a weird caption. And ended up getting the attention of the cast from that. And I scored a touchdown that night. So it all kind of blew up and was like comicbook.com was like, this football player scored a touchdown the same night as he wore a Critical Role shirt. It doesn't mean anything. Like, sure, let's keep wearing the Critical Role shirts. Yeah, that's how my my face is known to a small amount of people in the D&D world.
So was that first game? Was it in the comic book shop?
Yeah, it was, which was so interesting. I didn't get to play D&D with like a group of friends. These were all random people at the comic book
Hmm.
shop that ended up
Yeah.
becoming friends, but I really wanted an opportunity to play D&D with people that I knew outside of just D&D. Like that was important to me to be able to not only grow that for those friendships, but also feel that much more comfortable at the table because I wasn't role playing at the time. I wasn't doing character voices. I was excited for encounters and like mystery and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And getting into the role play of things was really important to me. So I ended up that was kind of my start of evangelizing D&D to teammates. So I had 3 teammates when I was at UNLV who I invited to come play at a game at my apartment, and we had I think maybe 3 or 4 games, and I was just flying by the seat of my pants with this game that I was having a lot of fun with, but things fell apart. We graduated. We weren't able to get a regular game going. Um, and fast forward a few years, I decided to do the same thing to, if you are a football fan, you know his name, Myles Garrett. He was wearing, he is a former #1 overall pick, former defensive player of the year, perennial pro bowler, all pro, one of the best football players in the NFL. One of my buddies with the Browns. At the
Hmm.
time, I didn't really know him. I just saw him wearing a Stranger Things shirt every couple days during training camp, and I when I signed with the team, people were saying on Twitter like, "Oh, you got to get Miles into the game. Like he's a big nerd. He loves anime." I'm like, "Well, that's a leap."
Yeah.
You know, I but I ended up asking him, it's like, "Hey, I see you're wearing a Stranger Things shirt every once in a while. Do you ever want to? Have you ever thought about playing the game that they play in Stranger Things?" So he was down. We got a couple other guys involved, Wyatt Teller, Kendall Lamb, who wasn't with the Browns at that point, and after that. But we had a little group going, and then Sports Center, and sorry, not Sports Center. Well, Sports Center did. Sports Illustrated and ESPN decided to cover that D&D group, which was
I saw
just
that video, and
so
that
weird.
that was one of the questions I had later, but I'm gonna bring it up now. Like, so you
Yeah,
you you started a D&D club in an NFL locker room, which is just a fantastic sentence.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I never really thought of it as a D&D club. It was just
yeah,
like it was a D&D group. It was a party.
yeah,
It's like the group that you uh it did end up being kind of a D&D club. The party named themselves the Heathens, so the group decided to kind of take on that moniker. I don't even think it means anything. I think Miles was just like, that sounds cool. Let's just call ourselves the Heathens. I don't
that's
think
the
there was
best
any
names,
reason.
though. That's the
Yeah,
best names.
the names that have no reason for why you're being called that.
My 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 home group's name is the Golden Pals, and it's I think because of a Golden Girls joke at one point, but
Yeah,
we don't remember.
yeah. I mean, if I think names that mean a lot are great.
Yeah.
Names that don't mean anything are better. Names that are just a joke are the best.
Yes.
Uh, I've I think I was the originator of a few different party names and games that I played. One was Bad Business, which didn't mean anything. Another one was Tough Love. And then the one that we're playing in, there was also Horse's Mouth or something. It was like from a lion. It was like, don't look a horse in the mouth. I don't know. From
Yeah,
whatever
don't look
the
a gift
idiom
horse in the
is.
mouth sort of
Don't
thing.
look.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was the Gift Horses. It was the
Yeah.
Gift Horses.
Gift
And
horses.
then the group that I DM for is, they called themselves the Seekers, but originally it was the Super Sexy Dragon Seekers. So D&D group names, I don't think anybody's ever had a really serious one that you're
uh,
like, you don't laugh a little bit, even a little bit when you say it.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I love D&D group names. It's one of my favorite things. Like when I get a group together, I will be like, come on, you guys got to get some form of a name. Like I
It's
got to call you
so
something.
hard. Yeah, it's so hard. Like if you are able to get a name in before session 5, you're very impressive to me, but you also don't know what's coming down the line.
Yeah.
So like
That
it's so hard to make a decision like that without any kind of the context for what the game is going to be.
Yeah. The one of the few times I've gotten that is we were doing a session 0 and we were kind of figuring out like what we were gonna do, and we kind of just stumbled on this idea that we were all students for an adventuring school.
Okay.
And when we're going out on a field trip, and so we decided to name the group the Academics, which seemed to work really well. But the main thing was that idea of the students, and one of the players was the teacher, and was just this old annoyed dwarf, and it worked out really well, and it came about because we thought of the name first.
That's awesome. The group that I'm part of right now is called the Drifters, if you write it down. But if anybody asks, we're called the Drifties. And if anybody asks, like, why the Drifties, you say Drifties nuts. So that's kind of the running joke that we have in the game.
Well played. Well played. So we're here today to talk about Twiggy, and actually we got a question from the chat already, which I'm gonna bring up here about Twiggy, which this is from I'm gonna say Cesarine. I'm gonna go with that. Sorry if it's wrong. Words are hard. Question: did the idea of Twiggy come from one of your games you DM/played, or are they something or someone new that you came up with for this game?
So Twiggy, the only reason why Idle Champions even has Twiggy in the first place was because my now wife, previously my fiance, obviously, when I asked her, was kind of signed off on it because Twiggy was originally her idea.
Oh,
so
really?
Maddie, my wife, plays in my game. I introduced her to D&D and her brothers. And we have a great game that's been going since 2020. It's been really fun. We have long stretches where we don't play, unfortunately, but we're family, so we're easily able to get back into it. So Maddie plays a druid named Vyleria, and we originally were playing Dragon of Icespire Peak. And Maddie was saying, it'd be really fun. I want a familiar. I think a familiar would be really cool. And this was actually before Tasha's, when druids actually got to have Find Familiar. Like, you know what? Screw it. Like, there's no reason to not give you Find Familiar. Like, what kind of familiar do you want? It's like, I want a baby Groot. Like, okay. And I had to think about it, but then why am I thinking so hard about this? Like, there's no reason why I can't just make a baby Groot. And then I realized very quickly that Dragon of Icespire Peak has a very heavy influence of like twig blights, vine blights, like thorn blights. I forget the last one. But these little evil plant creatures that you have to fight every once in a while. And there's actually one location, I think it's the Manson or something like that you fight in, a location that you travel to in Dragon of Icespire Peak, where you fight a bunch of these twig blights.
Yeah.
And I decided that when they cleared out these twig blights and then kind of redeemed this tree and kind of like cleansed this tree that happened, I was pushing her to like not just like pushing them not to necessarily cut down the tree, but also kind of like interact with it. And then her like druidic powers were able to cleanse this tree. And when the tree was cleansed, this seed kind of formed from the ground and entered Maddie's character Vyleria, in which one of the twig blights that they had fought kind of resurrected as a twig blessing. And now Twiggy the Twig Blessing is her familiar. And he is a very a very big personality within the game.
I love that. It is a literal familiar. It's not just a familiar in Idle Champions. It is a familiar. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool. Was this kind of like one of those like, okay, I need to make a familiar, like I'm gonna like immediately thought went to Twiggy?
Well, it was the whole fact that she wanted a baby Groot familiar in the first place was what led me to realizing that twig blights have a big presence in Dragon of Icespire Peak, which is since then I did the whole Adventure Zone thing of like starting a very classic game and then moving on to creating your own thing. But yeah, the whole point of them being able to cleanse the tree was for her to be able to bring one of these twig blights under her protection.
And so when Idle Champions came to you and was like, we want you to make a familiar, was it?
Well,
pretty...
honestly, when Idle Champions first came to me, I didn't know it was for a familiar, so I started thinking like, oh man, what character? Like, I'm not really known for any specific character. And then when she said when I was told that it was going to be a familiar, I'm like, oh, this actually makes the question a whole lot easier because Twiggy is the only familiar in our game right now.
That's so cool. I love that. And
Yeah.
now this past Monday you played Twiggy on a familiar quest. Now knowing that, like, was it weird like playing Twiggy as a full-fledged character instead of just your wife's familiar?
A little bit, because I don't give Twiggy any dialogue besides Twiggy, 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 Twiggy. Like, it's the whole Groot, like I am Groot thing,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's just saying Twiggy in a kind of a small raspy voice. And you can get a whole lot out of that, but just giving him actual personality and being able to speak, I had to give a little bit of forethought, but I think he definitely carries on uh, the whole attitude that he has. Like, he's I think the tagline, or the byline that I have underneath Twiggy for Idol Champion on the store is former blight, current blessing, total scamp. Because that's what he is. He's just a scamp. When I was told that I was going to play him as a level 8 character, I'm like, oh man. My first thought obviously is druid, because he's created of like druidic powers, and but then I realized he doesn't really use much like druidic stuff. He's not interacting with animals. He's not like doing too much of that. I did give him magic initiate for druid, but he is a rogue. He's just this little
Oh,
like
really?
sneaky guy who gets to create havoc.
What kind of rogue did you make him?
A scout. I feel like that
Oh,
was the most natural rogue character, and nobody ever plays rogue scouts.
I'm not gonna
Uh,
lie. Until you said it, I forgot that it existed for a bit.
I mean, of the three pillars of D&D being role play, combat, and then travel,
Hmm.
or I think the one that always falls by the wayside is travel, and
Yeah.
scout is one of those subclasses that really focuses in on that, because you get these benefits like survival and nature checks being, you get expertise in, and that is not one of the more regular checks. And then you do get one thing for skirmish, where if somebody moves within your area of like melee range, you can
Hmm.
use the reaction to move away without opportunity attacks. So that's
Oh,
a fun little ability, but I just it doesn't live up to stuff like Arcane Trickster or
yeah.
some of the other rogues. So um, but I'm having fun playing him. I'm having fun. I gave him we give the ability of getting a rare item and an uncommon item. And for the rare item, I chose a bracer of flying daggers. So you
Ooh,
get, I think it's called bracer of flying daggers. You just get unlimited, throwable daggers, which I'm just using as like thorns that he's throwing out.
yeah.
So that's fun.
I always love finding magic items that you can theme
Reflavor.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great for one shots. You don't have to like, you don't have to get the item, and then it's when you receive the item in game, it is a physical item that you have to, there's no way to flavor it besides
Yeah.
just putting it on your body. But if you can just instill it within your character, I think it's pretty perfect.
Yeah. No, you're right. One shots are great for that. Now thinking of the times I've done it, they were all one shots.
Yeah,
So how did playing on Familiar Quest go?
it was great. I had a great time. um I think the only people that I hadn't played with before were Brian and Eugenio.
Okay.
So I don't, you know what? I haven't played with Megan before, but I've been able to meet her before, and it's such a great cast.
Hmm.
Are all, they crack each other up so much that it's hard not to just have a great time
Yeah.
when you're at that table. And they all have great senses of humor. They all know to a T what their characters are all about, like what their whole deal is. And there's nothing more fun than playing with people who really really know their characters. I mean, nobody knows their character more than Kelly, who's just playing her own dog.
Yeah.
And that is like, she brings a whole lot of character to Scotty.
'Cause Scotty is one heck of a character in general,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, Megan, I mean, with Squiddle, I mean,
Mhm.
she's played that I know of on stream, I think 3 versions of this character, because it started with Whittle, now it's Squiddle, and then there was Riddle.
Nice.
So she's got a whole multiverse of just her character. And you're joining for next week, right? You're joining
I
for 2
am.
episodes?
Yeah, I'll be here
Yeah.
for episode 4 as well.
Heck yeah. I mean, folks, we're on the same channel and whatnot. I know there might be some spoilers. You can mute it if you want, but like what happened this week with Twiggy showing up?
So Twiggy showed up because he was looking for the character that we know as Pest. He didn't know who Pest was. This cat with a green scarf is all that he knew what they were. And he was looking for them because he wanted to get back to his vacation and wanted to just give Pest over to the Red Wizards that showed up because he didn't know the context of why these people are here or why this person's running away. So like, hey, if I can get back to my vacation quicker, I can really enjoy my time because this is kind of ruining my time off.
I'm now
So
picturing a Red Wizards of Thay like vacation company.
yeah, yeah. No, Twiggy was excited to get back to his vacation. It's the only time off that he has. Valeria, his summoner, gave him the time off, so he went to this like very forested area, and this group of four people decides to come to show up and starts wreaking havoc. And I just know it's because they're looking for this person. It's like, okay, the easiest way to fix that is just give them this person, they can leave. And then the party was able to convince Twiggy to like, hey, let's not just hand over our good friend to the Red Wizards today. Like, okay, fine. So yeah, it was a really good time. We came across an undead ogre and
Mm.
fought it, and then came across one of the Red Wizards and beat up on it. I'm not. I think maybe one of us took damage. I don't think it was that much of a fight. It's so weird. It's so fun, but also very weird playing a familiar that's also a level 8 character because it's so much more than any familiar could do. Like, as a rogue, I'm doing like 31 points of damage on like one hit.
Oh,
And it's
I know some people who wish they had those familiars.
yeah, 100%. Which gives me great ideas of actually like leveling up familiars in game. One of my favorite things. So I listened to NADPOD campaign 1 this last year, and now my wife is going through it, and she'll listen to it in front of me, and they just got to the part where spoilers, Papa gets like a buff. Not much of a spoiler, but Papa gets a nice buff. And it's fun to be able to like, okay, that could be cool. Like I could give Twiggy this or that in the game. So it's definitely gets the cogs going.
I do enjoy stuff like that. Like there's always something, especially I mean in D&D, like everybody wants the treasure, the new magic items and everything like that. But I do love times where there is something where it's like this is going to persist through the entire game and will get damaged out because that's how the numbers work. And
Yeah.
I love just for story reasons like this does more now, so it's still relevant.
No, I mean, I was telling you before the stream started about this axe that I gave my barbarian, and I realized very quickly that the axe was already overpowered, and it was going to be able to upgrade throughout the game based on different story beats. So instead of, I think before it like awoke of like the vestige style items awakening, before it had awakened, it was already pretty powerful. I think anytime that you caused a creature to go to 0 hit points, you would gain like 2d6 temporary hit points.
Oh, dang.
So when you're fighting against like a bunch of minions, you're getting, you're barely ever dipping into your real hit points. So I decided to cut that down. It's like you only get those 2d6 on the first creature that you drop to 0 hit points in a day. And then when it awoke, it was just getting a huge amount of damage. Like I told you that this barbarian's axe, when they start the rage, they get to dip into their hit die to create this damage pool that anytime they hit, basically kind of like a paladin smite, you can add this d12. And if you crit, you can add 2d12 to the damage. But because it's so powerful, like this thing, you can possibly do 4d12 on a crit plus. And he's a zealot barbarian, so he's doing another like 46 or something on his damage. Yeah. It's crazy. I decided like rather than mechanically debuff it, I think you can like I decided to make it a story beat so that any time that he used this ability of dipping into his hit die and allowing this extra rage damage to occur, there are these undead druids where this axe is very important to them. And they've already encountered these druids twice, and they're really tough. So that every time they drop into 0 hit points, they actually just come back because they're undead. So anytime he uses this, it has to be for like a really good reason. And it's always a guessing game if the druids are going to show up.
I love that you somehow did like Frodo putting on the ring with an axe.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
No, I
really
have a
cool.
whole idea if they do end up getting their hands on the axe. I have minis painted and everything. I won't spoil it
Oh.
in case my players end up watching, but it's fun.
Oh man, that is one of my constant battles on this show or on any of the shows that I'm on is like I want to talk about the stuff, but I'm like, oh, my players might watch this.
Yeah. My wife doesn't care about anything I'm in. I should know better by now.
Well, you talked about painting minis there, and you're going to be on Paint and Slay this week. What is
Tomorrow,
your
yeah.
experience with painting minis?
I started painting, I believe, in 2021. A few years ago, I thought it'd be really fun to finish the Dragon of Icespire Peak arc of fighting Cryovane with a painted mini, because previously we had battle maps that I would draw on, but never would kind of fulfill this, immersion of having minis. So I decided to have Cryovane fully painted, and that was a cool moment at the table of bringing Cryovane out. And since then,
Was it the
I can show
WizKids
you.
one? You got it. Oh, you got it nearby. I love when we get show and tell moments on this show.
So I have Cryovane right here,
Oh, nice.
so you can kind of see with the blur. But
Yeah.
I think I watched this YouTube tutorial. This is the first mini I painted, maybe the second mini technically, but I was really proud of it. I spent a lot of time on it. And I was really
Yeah.
proud of this like kind of
Wow.
like orange to purple sunset look on the back of its wings, just to break up the blues and the whites.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, I threw some purples in there, and I was really proud of it, especially for it being my first mini.
Absolutely.
And then of course I did this big blue like dot right here that you can't really see, but if you look closely, it's like, well, you're gonna drip paint sometimes.
Yep, it happens.
I'm always excited to actually play with these minis that I paint, especially like the bigger ones, because otherwise, if I haven't played with it yet, I need to keep it hidden. I can't just put it on shelves. And when I finally get to play with it, I can display it, because I don't want Maddie to be able to see, the next big bad that they're about to fight.
Oh, there's been several times where my wife has come into the room. She's like, "What you doing?" And I'm like, "Nothing."
Yeah, no, it's happened multiple times this week for sure.
I did just get a ping that we're getting the giveaway ready to go. So chat, keep an eye out in there. Our awesome mod Jordan is going to put a keyword in there, put it in the chat just once. You only got to put it in there once. You'll be entered for a chance to win 42 chests of your choice in game, excluding Bahamut chests. And hopefully you get some good stuff. So with minis, you started painting them in 2021 for the end of Icespire Peak. Like, was that kind of like the floodgates? Like, as soon as that happened, you were just painting minis a bunch?
Yeah, I wish I remembered like what my second mini that I painted was, but I really enjoyed it. You know what it was actually? I remember the next one that I really wanted to do, because I thought that it would be the end of an arc boss fight was an aboleth. I painted a lot smaller, but it was still fun to kind of get that gradient and mix colors. And that was such a new experience for me, because I'd never really ventured too much into painting or artwork and stuff. So that was fun to do. And then that arc switched from an aboleth being the final villain into a false hydra. And I've tweeted it out, but I actually have the mini here. Have the big old Comet Lord miniature print of the false hydra mini.
Oh man, that is gnarly.
It looks horrifying.
It does.
And it's all shiny and gross.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so freaking cool.
So I'm glad I haven't used the aboleth yet, because the false hydra was a much more satisfying fight, or satisfying arc in general. The fight doesn't matter. It's all about what leads up to it.
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
If you don't know what a false hydra is, don't look it up, because your DM might use it at some point.
That is always the fine line I find with D&D stuff, where it's like, oh, that's a really cool monster, I want to go look. Oh, but maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad. I obviously want my brothers-in-law and my wife to be as invested into D&D as I am, because that makes it that much more fun. I'm glad that I'm more into it than they are, because then I get to still get to surprise them with things.
That's true.
So many D&D players are like, oh my gosh, a false hydra, that sounds so cool. But the minute that arc starts, you might think like, oh, you know what, a whole bunch of people, blah blah blah, spoilers,
Yeah.
I think I know what's coming. So if you're not a DM, like, trust me, if you're watching this and you're not a DM, don't look up what it is. You're gonna thank me later when your DM ends up putting it in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is a. It's a balancing act. Like there's always the character knowledge versus player knowledge thing. Anytime I am a player, I have to just shut off that side of my brain where I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't remember stats. I don't remember any of this. We're not. I don't know what the AC of a goblin is. Let's just go.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
So for paint, what do you know what you're doing for paint and slay tomorrow? Do you know what the mini is?
We are doing a Myconid Sovereign
Ooh.
to kind of get the twiggy feel out of it. So not a whole lot of colors, probably more, bark-like appearance
Mm-hmm.
than the fungus bright colors. So which is okay because I still have a couple Myconids that I based out right here. That I
Oh,
just did
oh
some slap chop to speed paint later. But so I'll be able to get my bright fungus fix. So.
yeah. You and I were talking about the Steam Forge encounter boxes before the
Yeah.
chat. Have they? I can't remember. Have they done a Myconid one? I don't think they have.
No, I don't think so. They've done undead, they've done orcs that kind of lead into a giant.
Yeah.
They've done the kobolds that go into the dragon. They have goblins that go to the giant spider, which I just actually had a game with as a player that my DM put in front of us. And then
Those
there's the
boxes are
purple worm
cool.
one. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
purple worm one, I don't know what minions they have.
Oh, I think the purple worm one is just. I think it's just the purple worm.
Okay.
Yeah, because he is a big one.
Yeah. No, I think what they do a great job of with Steamforge does a
Mhm.
great job of having these two boxes kind of combined. Like the kobold ones, you could just run the kobold encounter. But
Mhm.
if you get both boxes, the kobold and the dragon queen, not the dragon queen, but a dragon queen,
Yeah.
you can lead the kobold encounters into the dragon fight.
Yeah. No, those boxes are so much dang fun. They sent me a couple of them, and I was just like, oh my god, these are so
Yeah.
cool. And then I slowly looked at my pile of unpainted minis, and
Oh
went, oh
yeah.
no.
Yeah. It's the ever growing pile of unpainted is tough, especially when you have a printer. So now you get like
Oh,
people sending you minis and you get to paint your own what you're going to use.
I
Okay,
I
well, I'll get to the other ones soon.
I think that's one reason I haven't gotten a 3D printer yet is because
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm just gonna want to print everything, and I
Hmm.
won't have time to paint any of them. Ah.
No, yeah. I know the feeling.
So, you mentioned the of Dusk and Dawn earlier. Tell me about that game.
So that originated with just this idea of having two gods in a world. The whole idea is that Miracle is this setting, this world that I am setting the world in, and it was very vanilla. I was like, I have not created anything in this world prior to you guys, to my characters, my players creating their characters, and then building out world behind that. And that's how I like to DM. Oftentimes, I know some people like to create this whole giant world and then set
Hmm.
players in and let them build the characters. But I really like to create interesting things surrounding what they want their characters to be about and building off of that. So Miracle was this very vanilla world. The only thing that was kind of already set in stone was that there are two gods, Noctos and Luma, the god of night and the god of light. And then that built into, though there are only two gods because there was this huge pantheon, like Olympus size, like, okay, there's a god of this, a god of this, a god of this, a god of
Hmm.
this, and they're all hanging out in the same location. But that obviously that amount of egos in one location can cause some huge issues over the course of
Hmm.
millennia. And every time a god, and then the other thing was that there are two gods, one of them's dying.
Mm.
And like what does that, like what kind of relationship does that cause? Because the world doesn't know that these two gods are actually in a relationship. And
Oh.
they kind of have this life cycle of dying and rebirth. Every time one gets reborn, there is something that is called, and this is a little bit of spoilers, but it's kind of just the setup for the story.
Hmm.
Um, every time a god dies and it gets reborn, there is this forgetting the name of it now, but there's this item that gets created that the gods need to go get to allow for them to be able to be fully reinstituted into this pantheon and gain their divinity back. So when that happens, people who are not fully divine or even mortals will fight over this item to try to gain divinity, which has caused the pantheon to shrink from dozens of gods to just two. And now these two gods have taken all of these domains over, and every domain, trickery, light, I can't think of any knowledge. All of them get absorbed by these two different gods, and now they're trying to do the work of dozens of gods, just as they're these lone two beings.
As a mythology nerd, I love that premise. That is a really, really cool premise. Like, just going from a pantheon, and it's like, okay, we're now down to a dualistic god situation, and we might end up at a monotheistic, and that what would happen there? That's really cool.
Thanks. It was fun to kind of arrive there and then have all the players' stories be surrounding that, and because that's the only information that I gave them, is that there's Luma, there's Noctos, there are the followers of those two gods, there are the zealots of those two gods that kind of fight against each other, and that the world doesn't know that they're actually like in love with each other. Like that's all you have to go off of, and then just build out this whatever character you want, and let's build something out of it.
I really like that approach, because like I mean, I think every DM has that. It's like, oh, I want to build this entire world that feels lived in and everything, and I can just drop players in. But the reason I like that style of it is, like, if we're doing the Forgotten Realms and someone's like, oh, I want to make an elf, what do I need to know about elves? It's just like, look here, 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 and here. Like, you can just send them to it. When it's a world that you've completely made, it's like you are the one resource. Unless you have a massive Word document, you're the only one that can really tell them things. And the approach of having that idea of a world and then letting your players go and make whatever they want in it, and it being this collaborative storytelling just for world building alone, I love that kind of
it allows so much more ownership for the players, because it's hard. Like, I think one of the hardest things that to learn in role playing, it's like at the advanced level, is allowing for backstory to grow organically in game, improvisationally, rather than something that you write down on a table and relate to that. It's like, okay, well, maybe this bartender is a character that my character who's in his hometown already knows. Like, why not just play like that? Like, that's the very base level of it. So rather than, I can sometimes rely on them saying, okay, well, there are, you go, but you're back in your hometown now. Where do you go? Like, what's the bar that you have always gone to growing up, and we're like, have all these memories at? It's kind of that to the nth degree of like, okay, now build this city. Like, what else is there?
And if they've come up with those places, those locations, I do think that as a player, like, it's like, oh, I'm from Waterdeep, and you as a DM are like, oh, Waterdeep's in trouble. They're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll go save it. But like, I feel like if they made the place, and you're like, the place you made is in trouble, they're like, let's go. They get that urgency.
Or if you're like my wife, you get mad at me for putting Waterdeep in trouble. Like, well, why'd you do that? I'm like, because it's a story. Like, what do you want?
There have been a few times with my wife at the table where she's looked at me and go, we're going to talk after this game.
Yeah. It just comes out as frustration and side eyes.
Well, Jai, we got a few questions from the chat while we've been talking, and I want to get through a few of these before we have to head out. We're going to start with a question from someone who I don't have the name of. Apologies, but it's your question. This is, since you've helped introduce a lot of people to the hobby, what suggestions do you have to encourage new people to try D&D?
Oh, man. I think you got to be asking the right person, for one. Because there are plenty of friends that I've brought it up to them, but I know them enough to know that, like, okay, you wouldn't have that much fun doing it.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason why it's not super common for a bunch of jocks to do super nerdy things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay to have different interests. Like it's not
Yeah.
a binary, but it's also not like a Venn diagram that's a circle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So asking the right person, and when you know that you have the right person, you can, like the way that I was getting Miles is like you can relate a lot of these like anime fantasies that he's built up into a character or a setting or a story within D&D. Like his characters were very anime inspired, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
is, you know, being able to really relate your it comes out also like in like inside jokes, relating
Yeah.
your life, relating your interests into these games. Where for those of you who are interested in Barstool Sports, their podcast, uh, my gosh, I can't even think of the name. I haven't listened to a long time, but they
Mm-hmm.
had a D&D campaign that
Oh
happened
yeah.
where that related a bunch of like things that happen in sports or character, like, you know, people who are in sports that have big personalities
Oh
into that
really?
game. Yeah, they did it in a very fun way. Um, and being able to relate some funny things that, you know, it's the humor is the easiest way of getting people invested. And if
Mm-hmm.
you can relate inside jokes or into a game,
Yeah.
if you actually get them at the table, which is congratulations that you're over halfway there,
Mm-hmm.
um, is the way to try to get them coming back
Yeah.
until they get really invested into the world itself rather than relating it to the outside world.
I like that.
So I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the best advice, because getting them to the table itself is like it's that's such a
Oh yeah.
challenge.
And I mean, you said
Um,
there at the beginning, like there are folks who it's just like they don't want to. That's fine. Like one of the things that I've said, like, oh, I wish I could have played D&D when I was like in high school and stuff. I wish I had
mhm,
been into it then. But like my group of friends, they probably wouldn't have played. Like thinking
yeah,
back on, I'm like, yeah, they weren't the type of people that would have sat down and rolled some dice, and that's
yeah.
okay. Yeah. Uh, getting people into the game, definitely the getting them
I
to the
mean, now there's the
table is
movie.
the.
If the
Oh
movie is
yeah.
going to get you, you know, a whole bunch of points in getting people to the table.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That
The amount
I
of
do.
people that have come to me since seeing the movie saying like I want to play D&D is, you know, more than five, more than on one hand.
True, true. Our next question comes from Orc Princess, who says, "Question: Do you have a favorite character that you return to play often?"
There is a character that I unveiled. I had him as an NPC for a long time in my games, or not for a long time. I had him in my head for a long time. Got to introduce him into my home game uh, somewhat recently, and then when there was a charity game that I ran last year that I didn't run, but I organized last year called Rolling for Red Nose Day. It was a live event in Cleveland where I got Miles and Wyatt from the Browns to play at the same table as Abria Iyengar and Ify Wadaway,
Oh,
and got
cool.
Brandon Tharp, who's a local Ohio guy, to dungeon master it. Um, I was trying to figure out what character to play, and when my wife told me, I think like, okay, this is the perfect character to play. There's a Fire Genasi gunslinger that was in my head for a long time, and I'm so glad that I busted him out for that event. His name is Heller Highwater, last name Highwater, first name Heller. That I am going to, I think, revive for multiple games, not just for the one shot. So
That sounds like an
um,
awesome character.
yeah.
That is an incredible name.
Thank
That is so
you.
good.
I know for our producer Lauren DM'd Radiant Citadels for me. I got to join for a couple episodes of that, and I had another fun pun name. His name was Mark. His last name was Of the Beast. So getting to play Mark of the Beast, whose last name was taken by his patron, and now he needs to advertise Of the Beast, was another fun one that I had.
That's awesome. I do love having the rotating cast of characters that I might play at a table, because I'm a forever DM. I'm not a player that often, but having those few that it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm just gonna take you out of retirement. I'm just gonna play you
Yeah,
real quick.
no, it makes life a lot easier.
I guess this is a question slightly been answered, but we'll go with it. As Star Chaser 483 says, question: Johnny, are you a forever DM, or does your group share DMing the games?
Uh, just depends on the group. As far as my home game that I run for my family, I am a forever DM for that group. However, I rarely DM outside of that unless it is for an event or something. It's very hard for me to have multiple stories going on in my head at the same time, and that's a
Mm.
skill that I've yet to learn as a DM. But so often, for Of Dawn and Dusk, I had to take a long break from my home game to be able to fully plan out Of Dawn and Dusk. And I'm able to play in games outside of that, which is really good for my mental well-being, because I do love playing at the table. I don't feel the artistic or like the creative output or the creative satisfaction that I get from DMing as I do. It's more satisfying to DM and allow these stories that you think of for literal years before they actually get to come to play at the table, rather than as you're a player, you're kind of coming up with things on the fly. Obviously, as a DM, you're doing that as well, but you're coming up with these big moments from session to session.
Yeah.
And there's only like a handful of things that you're doing as a player that you're like really excited to unveil, like a big backstory moment as a player. Whereas a DM, that might be happening every single session for you because you've been thinking about this thing since 2020 in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh, dang. I'd never thought about like that, but you may have nailed why I love DMing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
every game that you play, every session that you have is an idea that came to you a long time ago and something that you've been building up to.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a player, most of the time you're reacting. If there is something that the DM is kind of throwing you the bone and allowing for something that's really big in your backstory, you're only going to get that a couple times a campaign.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow, yeah. No, I mean, literally, the game I'm doing right now, I've been building up to this story since 2011, and I'm like every session, I'm just so hyped, and my player's like, awesome. "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Nothing. It's fine."
Having a poker face at the table is the hardest thing.
Oh my god, yeah. I am terrible. The players will say something, and then someone will never go, "Treavor made a face."
Hey, what are you just roll dice? What are those dice? What are you?
No, don't worry about those. They're fine. They're just me fidgeting. I got the ADHD. It's fine. Our last question comes from Morty Rocks, and I think this has to do with the item from of Dawn and Dusk. It says, "Which would you rather have, a divinity stone or an infinity stone?"
Oh man. The Divinity Stone, which I'm a bad DM. I cannot think of the name for right now. After that campaign was over, I'm like, I need to think about something else because that's just been infiltrating my whole brain for months. That and very different powers. That one actually makes you a god, whereas I think you need 6 of the Infinity Stones to kind of have the godlike powers.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I'll go with the Divinity Stone.
Johnny is the new god.
All hail.
Well, Johnny, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me today. This was so much fun.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. I was just gonna say, check out Paint and Slay tomorrow. I was gonna.
Yeah. You're not done on this channel yet. But yeah, definitely check out Paint and Slay tomorrow, and then Familiar Quest on Monday. But if people wanted to find you and anything else you do on the interwebs, where could they do so?
I am on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter, all Johnny Stanton IV. Today just lost my blue check mark on Twitter, so you're just gonna have to make sure that I'm the right one. But yeah, you can definitely find me there.
Heck yeah. And be sure to pick up Twiggy right now in game. You could be doing that right now and help support an awesome cause of One Tree Planted. And yeah, have an awesome, adorable familiar that is a familiar who is now a familiar character. There's a lot of familiar things going on with him.
Oh, and also, if you do want to watch Of Dawn and Dusk without subscribing to the Twitch channel, it is available on my YouTube channel, which I'm pretty sure it's the only thing on my YouTube channel, Johnny Stanton IV, I think you'll find it.
And you also just look up of Dawn and Dusk.
Of Dawn and Dusk, yep.
Yeah.
Not of Dusk and Dawn.
Well, again, Johnny, thank you so much. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Idle Insight. So until next week, take care of yourself.